we wanted to share it with folks in Little Rock and get their reaction to it and see what might be claimed for this community and its betterment from the activities elsewhere. I'm Kathy Wells. I'm president of the Coalition of Little Rock Neighborhoods. As you can see from the agenda letterhead, we run a Facebook page, and there's a way you can get to us by email. My number's on it too if you want to call and chat or text me about something. We are going to start right now with the question of gun crime, which is awful, as we all know. And nobody seems to have a real good fix for that. So we have been hunting around, and Philadelphia has got a program that's been running since 2004. And it turns out they have been successful, and they've got some researchers at their university in the town that have analyzed the operation of this program over several years' time, and have concluded that if you go into an area with a lot of gun crime and you get to a vacant lot that has been taken over by the bad guys, and you redevelop it, you clean it off, the city goes in, they put in a park, a bench, they get the Horticultural Society to plant a tree, they put up a split rail fence around it, which will keep you from driving up in there, but it will invite in the neighbors and the kids to play. And the good drives out the bad. And where they've done this, and they consistently keep it up, because the city makes sure that it's mowed twice a season, and so forth and so on. And the result is that it cuts gun crime 5%, and it's stayed down for 4 years in a row that they track this. There are other things you can do that have even greater effect, but that's what this handout looks like with the flowers on it. That tells you a summary of the program, and at the bottom are the online information resources where the program is described in full, where their contact numbers are given, and you could pursue this yourself. The main question becomes, how do we deal with this in Little Rock? Well, right now, of course, one of the big problems is a lot of folks are not reporting to the police. It's on the 6 o'clock news, and there's many reasons for that. We went after the one that said, I'm afraid they will break my confidence and I won't stay confidential. And it turns out the Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Doc Holliday here, a man I've known in public service for a lifetime, has a solution. He has his own plan. And in fact, if you'll notice on the agenda sheet for this topic hour, that phone number for reporting to the Sheriff's Department is listed there. And they will not track numbers, and it is anonymous. And they regularly will take information that they will relay to the Little Rock Police Department. So that's a possibility that we wanted to bring to you and have the sheriff talk to you about. Where might we be in giving our top priority and our top attention? I just got this a couple of days ago from the Little Rock Police Department. This is the map, and this is the printout on the back. We wanted to know what were the top 10 gun crime addresses in the city of Little Rock. Turns out 2 of them are on the same block on Peyton Street. If we're interested in vacant lot that might be redeveloped in their face to try and cut them down, there's one on 16th and Washington a block away or behind these houses. But before we get to planting trees, we might see something be done about cutting back on the gunshots fired. Because this gun crime tally of 1,481 does include the shots fired they're tracking, along with the actual encounters with someone who's assaulting another, with someone who is robbing another at gunpoint. And in fact, all these Peyton addresses are shots fired. So somebody in that neighborhood's got a gun who shouldn't have a gun. And that takes you to the question about how we might report. And that takes us to Sheriff Holliday. How might we feel reassured that we can report safely?
Well, certainly the public, we try to make them aware that any information they provide to us is confidential. We're part of the sheriff's, and this is Major Carl Minden. He's my major over number of different divisions. It's been PIO for several years at the Sheriff's Department, been in law enforcement a long time. So I brought him along because he basically administers our Crime Stopper program. We are a part of a network of law enforcement agencies in Central Arkansas that's known as Central Arkansas Crime Stoppers. And we have a number at our agency that people can call. There's a number at the Little Rock Police Department that people can call, 371-4636 at Little Rock, 340-8477 at our place. But we take any information that someone calls in. We determine if it is related to an incident in our jurisdiction or City of Little Rock, City of North Little Rock, wherever. And we forward that information to the respective agency or to our investigators. Any information that we receive is confidential and it is not FOI. So, we have a way to determine whether that information is valid, whether or not the person who called the information wants to be identified or not. And that's strictly up to them. And whether they want to be identified or not, we still take that information and utilize it to determine how valuable it is. In those cases, and I will tell you, the majority of people who call aren't calling because there's money available for the information. They have other reasons. Either they're mad at somebody, or they just are a concerned citizen. They will call, leave the information regarding a particular incident that occurred, and if they identify themselves, we will call them back. If they want to be paid for that information, we will arrange through our Crime Stopper account to pay them. If they want to give us their name, we'll cut them a check through the Crime Stopper program, but we use a code. We give everybody their individual code so that when they pick up their check, they use that code number. So, but the most important part of all of this is that information is completely anonymous to anyone outside of our agency or the investigating agency. And because it's not FOIable, there is no way that we're going to allow the person who called in the information to be identified. And so we're trying to encourage the public to be more involved with law enforcement because so many people, there are very few crimes that occur that multiple people don't know about it. The perpetrator may have a partner who may have a family. The perpetrator has a family. Generally speaking, there's not anything that occurs that multiple people don't know about. The majority of those people don't agree with what's going on. They're certainly not happy that one of their relatives is involved in a crime, but they're reluctant to tell law enforcement because somehow they're afraid they're going to end up testifying in court. So none of that is going to happen. It's just a matter of making people understand that this information not only could be valuable to law enforcement, but it could be productive to them if they share that information with law enforcement. And I want to just talk about this violence going on. I was talking to Jim Lynch here a few minutes ago before I came in, and and I've been in law enforcement, this is my 46th year here in Little Rock, Pulaski County. And I can remember back in the 90s when we really had some things going on. You know, between 1990 and 1995, we had 544 homicides in Pulaski County. Now you think now, lately it's bad. Well, in the past 5 years in Pulaski County, we've had 342 homicides. So comparatively speaking, it's not near what it was back in the 90s. And those of you who lived here then and remember the gang wars and banging in Little Rock and the Oak Street Posse, and you know, you could go 7, 8 blocks down the street here, Pine Oak, and it was the headquarters of some of the most violent individuals around. That said, there are some serious problems now in the city of Little Rock. Because 342 homicides in the past 5 years is bad. When you think about the number of victims, and not only the 344 victims who died, but their families, the impact that it has on them, the families of the person who committed the crime, and the effect on them as well. So we need to be working as a community to determine what is causing this uptick. And right now, I would say that we're in an uptick. Now, whether or not we'll ever go back to the days of the 90s, early 90s, I doubt it. Because if you remember back then, it was a combination of law enforcement working together, the federal government, the FBI. We were all partnered in the Medrock Task Force that we developed back then, and law enforcement took a proactive approach within the communities. And I'm seeing some of that with what Little Rock is doing now with the development of this 15-person squad that they're going to target particular areas. And that's all well and good, because we need, in many cases, to protect people from themselves. But there are a number of social issues, and we don't have time to get into all of those social issues that create these kinds of conflicts within our community. But I do need people to understand, if you know something, you need to say something. And you don't need to be concerned that your name's going to appear in the newspaper as the person who called and turned in so-and-so. Doesn't happen that way. We have a system in place to protect the identity of anyone who wants to call with pertinent information, and we need the public to understand that. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add also that the neighborhood resource centers are places that you can call anonymously to let us know about things that are happening in the neighborhood. And we can work with the police to take care of those issues.
Identify that due to social media, that there's a system that you just talked about, the system of law enforcement. They have their systems too. Mm-hmm. And when we had the times before, Tommy Robinson, they were robbing businesses, and we had somebody in the back that was there when they get there.
Well, Ms. Annie.
Businesses asking you all to help them more, and we're looking at patterns. Just those of us who are not detectives, But we see some patterns.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that that's, our IT department, certainly the city's IT department, is always looking at crime trends and patterns, trying to determine where the most active areas are, and I think that's has a whole lot to do with this handout here. If you look at where the most active number of calls are coming in, what type of calls those are, whether shootings, violence, homicides, and what law enforcement does is react to that by intensifying patrols in those specific areas. What law enforcement needs to do, and what we're trying to do, is being more proactive and anticipate rather than and anticipate based on past history and mobilize in those areas that we anticipate are going to be problem areas unless we are proactive. I'll take you back a little further than Tommy Robinson.
Okay.
Before Tommy Robinson, that was not an original idea of Tommy Robinson. If you remember back in 72, 73, when Gail Weeks was the chief, Little Rock Police Department did the same thing. They had what they call the 24-hour squad, and they had people stationed in the back of liquor stores and convenience stores for a period of 2 years. And they had to quit. And the reason they had to quit, because in 2 years they killed 7 people trying to rob grocery stores, 7-Elevens, and liquor stores. And so that squad faded away in 73. So, but when Tommy got elected, then he of course he knew about what Little Rock had done, and he implemented that program in the county. So.
Am I hearing you say that the reason why the Little Rock success story went away was because they were going to have risk of being accused of killing too many people? That's one of the things now that we're dealing with.
I really think that's why it went away. The program was successful in its intent, but the end result may not have been what they hoped for in terms of so many people end up getting killed as a result of it, just in shot. So it faded away.
One follow-up on this. One of the things that we worked very hard on is during that period and now this period, we had the truancy task force for the Little Rock School District.
Right.
And the purpose of that was to be proactive, is to make sure that teenagers, school-age people, would not be the ones that would be involved in crime. And of course, the truancy has kind of died down too. We kind of get into having a peaking that we like this idea, but then you don't have enough volunteers. I mean, when I retired, it was a full-time job, just the truancy part of having a staff that when the police brought us a child in, and then we had to hold them until the parent could come,
Right.
then take them to the school, and then they have to get it reconciled. But right now, with the school district, the law enforcement, I'd like to know, how is the coordination relationship with that and the dropout and the truancy?
Well, you remember that program, church program, back when it was active. At that time, I was at Little Rock. Law enforcement would pick up a young person who should have been in school, and they would take him to the nearest secondary school. And then the school administration would be responsible for notifying the parent or returning the child to the school where he was actually enrolled. But again, I think it's one of those things where there are so many different reasons that a child may be out of school, and law enforcement is not necessarily aware of what all of those reasons are. So the program was a little fractured in terms of actually identifying who was truant and who was rightfully out of school. And now with so many homeschool kids, it's a different kind of system than it was back then. So, but again, I think the most serious, most critical issue was the schools were not staffed to handle these truants and monitor them until a parent could get there, or they'd call school security and they'd transport them to their where they were actually enrolled, and it just never was able to work.
And what's really sad about that is we thought we had a school system, and this is true, of course, across, I think, all of them, that had the staff to take care of the kids, because when you follow through on the truants means they turn into dropouts, which means they're on the fast track to a life of no job, so they're falling easily into crime habits, to take what they want, to get ahead, to get some of the shiny bling that seems to be so alluring to the consumers of the world. And when you know going in that a truant today becomes a dropout tomorrow and becomes part of the court system and filling a bed at Cummins Prison for next,
Well,
the question becomes, how come we never got the resources to, in fact, make that a success? Because it's true today.
Well, I am part of a group that's called Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. We had a press conference here last week down at Gary Springs, where several of us read to kindergarten kids. We talked about the importance of education. But more importantly, what we discussed was the necessity to reach these kids at the pre-K and elementary level. So many of the programs in the past, programs like DARE and some of those other programs, are all good programs, but their target was a much older level of student. Junior high, early senior high. And it's my view, and I think most law enforcement professionals agree, that if you don't get these kids early, you're not going to get them. I had a judge tell me one time, juvenile judge, if you wait till a kid's 14, 15 years old and he's in the system, in juvenile court, for instance, and once he's in the system, and he becomes likely then the next time he's arrested to be charged as an adult. And if you're charged as an adult, then you're pretty much going downhill. There are over 17,000 inmates locked up in the Department of Corrections in this state. The average education level of those 17,000 is 8th grade. Now you tell me how many people and many of them will never get out of prison. Most of them will get out of prison. But you tell me how many of them are going to be qualified for most jobs when they get out of prison. Well, that just highlights to me the importance of early intervention, early education. We have to keep these kids in school. We have to make sure that they're getting an adequate education. We can't just be passing kids from class level to class level just to get rid of them because they're somebody's headache. These kids, if we can influence them when they're pre-K, get them really interested in an education or stress the importance of an education, then hopefully as they go up the class level, they will understand the importance to their future of an education.
Let me ask you to frame that in terms of the map that we've got here, Doc. You look at how these dots are clustered up and down Harrison Street, clustered high number of reports around Peyton Street, and then the ones below Centennial Park on 16th and 17th.
Yeah.
How do we get to those families and those kids? I remember one of the things that officers told us about successfully getting a handle on the gun crime in the 90s was they would get citizen reports that 15-year-old Johnny has a gun, has a Tech-9, which clearly would not be legal. Do you think that we could use these targeted high gun crime locations to try and persuade those citizens to just get the reports in, there's an illegal gun, get the guns out?
Well, you know, there are a number of issues here, and I think the majority of them are, look, these areas that you've highlighted here are generally predominantly minority neighborhoods. But I will tell you that the majority of those parents, and I'll tell you this too, the majority of those homes are likely single parent. And those single parents are generally women. But I will tell you that the majority of those parents do not want their kids to be the target of crime, to be the victims of crime, and they are concerned about the security of their neighborhood as much as anybody in any part of Little Rock. They are. But those parents are generally having to work to provide for their families and their kids. So what we have is a lot of what we call latchkey kids. There's not the kind of supervision that the parents would like to be able to provide, but they're forced to work and to support their family because their partner is not available or not supportive or whatever. But we have an obligation and a responsibility, I believe, in government to be in those neighborhoods, supporting the communities and providing programs that are beneficial to these kids, whether it's some kind of program that provides an activity for kids, whether it's mentoring, whether it's after-school counseling. I don't know how many of y'all know Sanford Tollett, but you know, Sanford runs a mentoring program. I know you do, Ms. Annie, but Sanford Tollett runs a mentoring program at Pfeiffer Camp for basically at-risk youth who need assistance in learning and counseling and mentoring, and it's very successful for those kids who participate. I just think that those kinds of programs need to be utilized in these areas where there seems to be such a problem. They haven't asked me, but if they think they want to close Harrison Elementary, maybe they need to convert Harrison Elementary into some kind of facility that not only offers an educational benefit, but also a recreational benefit to that area of the city. Having a vacant building out there in the middle of a nice neighborhood is not conducive to anything other than tearing the neighborhood down. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm just seeing a lot of facilities being open to take the place of the parent. And I just feel like it needs to be more programs or more that target working with the families. Instead of trying us going and create after-school programs and stuff, and then the kids have to go back home. So we need to come up with programs, and we need the departments to work with these neighborhoods, not just patrol them when something happens. We need them to get out their cars and build relationships with these kids. So it's a two-way street. A lot of times the reason the people don't report stuff is because they don't have a trust in the police department. So when the police department's acting with the community stuff, you know how it is if you got a best friend or something, you share everything and you become comfortable.
And you are right, but I will take you back to 1974, and I don't know where you were in 1974, but but in 1974 we had what was known as the Residential Area Patrol, RAP Patrol, and we had, I think it was 40 officers who were assigned foot patrol, and it was four square blocks was each assigned area, I believe. And we had 40 officers assigned to walk, and it went from Woodrow to Fair Park, and from 12th Street south. That was the. In fact, I think it may have gone a little further east, maybe to Broadway.
Which is in fact on this map.
Yeah, from Broadway to University, 12th Street South. But the idea was exactly what you're discussing. They wanted those people in the neighborhood to know the officer, and they wanted the officer to know who lived in their particular walk beat area. They wanted the officer to be able to recognize if something was out of place. And generally they worked from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And that lasted for about, I guess, 3 years or so. And then it went away. And it went away because you had 40 or so officers. And as the call load grew, they just needed to reassign those officers to other duties. But that was a program that I thought was successful, and it addressed some of the concerns that you've highlighted there, that the officers were in the neighborhoods and they did know, and the people who lived in their 4 square block area knew the officers, and so it's important. I think the most important part of a contact like that is the relationship that officers develop with the kids. More important than the relationship they develop with the adults. I think it's important that if the officers can develop a relationship with the kids in the neighborhoods and are involved in activities, shooting basketball with them or walking down the street with them, or I think that's a more positive influence than even the relationship between the officer and the parents.
So
Yes.
Could I just follow on with that? Do you feel that that there are enough police staffed in Little Rock? So there was, like, I reported a crime on my property, and I had a really disinterested lady take this graffiti on my house. She said we standard would take a report of that over the phone, whereas I personally expected an officer to come around, take photos, talk to me about it, and I really, really think having the neighbours see a police presence at the house post the crime moment would have really instilled confidence in the neighbours, and if the perpetrator happened to be in their area, would have known that we were taking the matter seriously. That didn't happen. It was just reported over the phone, and no one came to follow that up until we chased it up. But do you think, like what you were just saying there about, and from your comment, officers patrolling the neighborhoods on feet, like that sounds idyllic. To me, it's the best case scenario. People get to know that there are law enforcement readily available and who they are, and they can depend on them. Do you think that there are enough police officers in Little Rock?
No. To do that now,
Yeah, now.
they're not. I can tell you they're not. They're down, I think, 70 or so officers on their, budgeted. There are not enough officers. Their call load is too heavy. They are chasing calls. And that's another part of the problem, is that officers don't have the time to spend on the follow-up because they're chasing calls. They're so busy. And that's part of the reason that a lot of those calls that come in today, they do a telephone report and you may never see an officer because it's not a serious crime. They can hire a clerk to take that call and document it much cheaper than they can hire a police officer to come out there and document it with no follow-up. So they certainly do not have enough officers. That's a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem until the city resolves their budget problems. I don't know why those are,
What
but
kind of staff numbers would you like to see elevated? Are they 5,000 down? Like, how many extra police officers do you think would fill the void?
well, of course they set a budget, and based on the area that they cover, and it's probably 130 or
124 square miles.
square miles. They know how many precincts they have. They know their call load to each precinct, so that they know how many officers they have currently per shift. And so they know how many more police officers they need to adequately cover their area, and they place those officers where the heaviest call load is, or where the need exists. And then they have specialized units like investigators and BICE and
Radar.
and the
Speeders.
motorcycle units and all of those. But they realize that and so they set a budget to the city council and saying, we need 500, and I'll just throw a number out there, 577 police officers. Well, they have 507, they're 70 down. So if they're 70 down, that means they're not able to provide the kind of coverage that they need to. It means that their response times are higher than they want them to be or need to be, because they don't have available officers to respond as quickly as they should or would like to.
But one of the things that's also true is that there is a heightened attention to, sensitivity to certain people in certain places. It's the way of the world. If they hear that there's a problem at City Hall, by golly, everybody's on the alert. If you hear something's going on at the courthouse, boy, are you sitting out there on the alert. If there's a problem at a park where there's a gathering, the annual X festival, and the radio says we got trouble coming, everybody's anxious to make sure the people at that festival are taken care of. So one of the things that's behind this Philadelphia vacant lots into parks idea, where there's high gun crime, is to take advantage of this very natural behavior by the authorities. If there is, let's just say for example, a vacant lot with some trees on it at 16th and Washington that folks turn into a little mini park at 16th and Washington, not only are you gonna have a whole lot more official attention, a whole lot more presence, now that's on the radar with the police quite literally. And they're gonna be following up on that investment to try and reduce gun crime. And one of the ways you're gonna be doing that is those officers are gonna be driving by that park. Would you say that's correct?
Well, I would, and I'm gonna follow up and finish, this new unit that the police department is starting, a 15-person unit to address this crime problem, gun problem.
The spikes and problems.
What's happening is that those 15 people are being drawn from other current assignments. And they're going to be told to focus in particular areas on particular issues. Well, that means that there are 15 less officers available for those normal calls. So that it impacts the police department more by having to utilize those 15 people. So they need more people. They certainly do. This issue, the Philadelphia plan, I think it's a great idea. It reminds me, and some of you who were around back in the 70s, remember the James Wilson theory of broken windows. And if you've never read that book, or if you're not familiar with that, you ought to go online and pull it up.
And they give credit in Philadelphia's write-ups to that exact principle.
And that principle was, if you live in a neighborhood and a window is broken, and you, the police department, codes, whatever, ignores it, then the next day there's another window broken, and then the next day somebody has gone into that building and, vandalized it, and then the next thing you know, somebody has gone in there and they're doing drugs, or they're hiding stolen property, or they're committing other crimes. So it's an issue of, if you don't address the problem, and if you don't have a plan in place, then those areas just erode. And what Kathy's talking about, and this Philadelphia plan is talking about, is just a reminder to the communities. If you know there's a problem and an area needs attention, then we have a responsibility to provide that attention and provide resources to upgrade it, to convert it to something useful, something that is productive, something that draws the neighborhood to it, rather than destroys the neighborhood from within.
The lady in red and Annie in the back.
I personally don't think government can do everything. And I personally don't expect government to do everything. I don't expect the police to do everything. I see a trend in my lifetime, less government, everybody's clamoring, they want less government. They elect people that talk about less government. So I would like to see the idea of reaching the families, reaching the kids in the nonprofit sector. There is not enough government money to hire all the police that need to be hired, or hire all the facilitators that need to be hired. There's lots of foundation money out there. There's lots of private money out there. But those foundations target 501c3 organizations. And in work I've done in the community, it's people that are trying to get 501c3 status. They don't understand it. They know what they want to accomplish, and they're a mover or a shaker in their community, and they're in the community, but but they don't have the ability to get that 501c3 started, and they don't have the ability to even understand what the possibilities for that 501c3 are and that foundation money nationally and locally that is out there. Businesses are looking to give money. They want it on their websites that they're giving money. They want their name out there. So there's money out there that's not government money that can be used for a lot of these programs. And I'd like to see some kind of, like with the Community Coalition or these people, be facilitators for these. The millennials get a bad rap of it's all about me, but there are a lot of young people that want to work in their communities, that want to establish 501c3s and nonprofits and do this kind of work at the community level. They just need help facilitating, and they need to see what the possibilities are. And so I'd like to see more effort being put in that way to facilitating people helping themselves rather than depending on government to do it.
Well, I agree, but I'll say this, that when you develop a program, you have to have a continuing funding source. Now, a lot of these groups that give away money, and they want to give away, they give it away, but it's a one-time gift. Now, once you develop a program, you have to have some entity, whether it's government, city government, state government, you have to have some entity out there who will provide a continuing funding source. Or you'll be successful the first year because somebody donated a sizable amount of money. But you can't continue unless somebody else steps up.
Many of the grants, though, I'm a grant writer, and many of the grants now are requiring that you show a 5 to 10 year plan.
Yeah.
And that you have gathered subsequent funding. So I do think there's longer term funding out there.
Well,
If I
And
could
it is
just
available.
amen to that, but also a good resource if you're interested is the Arkansas Nonprofit Alliance.
Okay.
And they do trainings for people who are looking to, donor relations, plan giving, how to do that stuff, how to engage their board, how to fundraise. They do lots of different workshops, and it's called the Arkansas Nonprofit Alliance. You don't have to be a member to go to their webinars, but I think usually, or their in-person trainings, but I do think they have some fees attached to it, but they're pretty reasonable.
And how are they, what kind of, are they a government or?
No, they're an association, they're a nonprofit themselves, and they help other nonprofits get started.
And with that, I'm going to say that our formal topic has been completed, and we're now on a 10-minute break. So feel free to get some more refreshments, and feel free to keep on talking. I'm not going to cut off anybody, but I just wanted you to know we're kind of on break.
what
So
was your question?
keep on going.
Well, basically, I was just gonna piggyback off of what she was saying. I'm part of a neighborhood association, and that's sort of the approach that I'm going with, is trying to just connect with the people in the neighborhood and find out what their needs and how we can work together. And one of the things I do is I did take a part in the RELOC program, and I went to the city and I was like, okay, you got the RELOC program, but you're bringing companies in to cut our vacant lots. So give it back to the association and allow us to utilize the kids and the homelessness and people in the community to cut our own lot and take pride in their own community.
Yes, ma'am.
And which neighborhood was this?
Upper Baseline, Windermere.
Upper Baseline, Windermere.
It's
Great.
Upper Baseline.
Yeah. That's out around Eagle Hill?
No, Southwest Little Rock.
I know.
Over there where Sister Bennett.
West of Stagecoach?
No, the opposite end. The baseline close to R Street.
Yeah.
I wanted to add a couple of things. The turning weed lots into community gardens, or it is a very good idea. And as a resource specialist, we try to assist with that in neighborhoods. We have 3 community gardens in our neighborhood, but I have not seen that it has done anything to decrease the gunshots that we hear. And many of the gunshots and gun crime that we hear in our neighborhood is fairly close to the gardens. So, not that it's a bad idea, I mean, I think everything helps. I forgot what the other thing, what we were talking about.
Well, it might be possible to encourage the anonymous reporting of folks who have guns and see if we can't get them out of the neighborhood. It won't be just one thing, you're absolutely right.
And that's part of what this gentleman's question about whether or not the police have enough officers, and they don't. But in order to be responsive, police cannot be everywhere. Police are not gonna stop all the homicides unless they put somebody in everybody's house or put somebody on everybody's street corner. Just not gonna happen. But they have to have programs, and they have to help, they need to be out in the community, trying to influence people's attitudes, trying to be seen. That's one of the reasons it's so important that they have adequate staffing levels, so they can put these officers out here in the streets, being seen, cutting down on the likelihood of gunfire, because these people see a police officer in the area and they know that the response is going to be there. Those are central issues to address the problem. But police cannot do it. That's one of the reasons I'm here today, to try to let you know about the importance of reporting things that you know or that you've seen, and being able to be assured that you can do it anonymously, and encourage people, tell your friends, hey, you can report this without giving your name, you can report this without being called to testify. It just does not happen that way. And if you want to be paid for it, there's money out there.
There's reports, arrests and convictions.
That's not answering this man's question.
Annie?
I just want to give you a little bit of a history. One of the things that we have to all understand in participatory democracy is systems talk to systems, and systems respect one another and depend on one another. I'm old enough to remember how neighborhoods became, quote, a slum neighborhood. Slum neighborhoods are places where you have more rental property than home ownership. There was a time when this room, we were talking because we knew that the rental property areas were growing. Who were the owners of those rental properties? And we began to give them a name that folks don't like to use. Slum landlords. They're the ones who own these homes, rented these. And they were called slum landlords because they bought property, got property at an advantage that most people don't even know about. Then in the disaggregation of who were those slum landlords, and all of us can do that. Look and see who owns the properties that we call crack houses, or we call them any of the other kinds of names we call them. And what some of us did, we did the research. They were lawyers, they were ex-police, present police, who owned the property as a slum landlord. And they got that property to make money in a capitalistic society. They sucked into it. There was nothing left for them to get profit out. They didn't give a damn what happened in the neighborhood. They owned that property to make profit. Profit is going to reduce the expense. So they didn't fix up their properties. They didn't intend to do that. After we identified who owned these properties, how those properties became available, we are almost at that point now that's a different kind. If you go and do your own little research, this town is becoming a rental town. They're not slum they are high price rental properties. Just think about this. Think where you see apartments from 2-story to 12-story apartments. Those apartments are the ones that used to be their residents, are the ones that used to be homeowners. Now they're senior citizens, and they are the ones who are making a good salary based on education. If you got an education, we can estimate how much you'll make, collegiate and above, especially talent. But what I wanted, and where you go, one of the things that when you're dealing with systems, you have to think of which system needs to be the one that starts this reaction. We know that who goes to prison is the person who has the least education. The least education you have, the more potential. You will not be able to make a good living for yourself, basically. So what do? You become a prime suspect for how you're going to survive. What happened is, if we really want to do systemic changes, and I've said this to the governor, and I've said it to the mayor, and all, we know that the dropout problem, how many people in the demographics of Alaska County, we know how many dropped out, and we know the causes of why they dropped out. But in the county jail and in prison, to turn education around, you got to have people who are going to dispense education. And when you come out of there, if you have a society that when you go in prison, go into the county, go into juvenile, and you are reading on 4th grade level, not 5th grade, and you have a systemic program in the institution, that when you come out, you have a high school education. I have fought for years. We didn't even have textbooks for the one teacher that was helping folks supposedly to get a GED in prison. Now that tells you we are not really committed to turning things around. If you know you got TB, you got to go to a TB sanatorium. If you know you got social diseases, then you got to go get that corrected. We're not committed to correcting the illiteracy, lack of education. We're not committed to that. Instead of getting more police, get more people to teach people how to be a GED when they come out. The other thing is, I've been on all the commissions that you can be on when you get to know institutions. The people in the federal prison, not cut ribbon for one in Bar City, the average person who goes to a federal prison has a GED or more, and they call them white collar crime. They're educated people. And if you go in there, that federal prison has better facilities, better resources than some of our community colleges and union colleges. Because the person went in there with some skills, and they utilize their